Wes. Thank you. It's nice to meet most of you today. I know a few of you here I've met already at some events. I guess, my focus, I grew up, I hate to tell you all this, in Cobb County. So I'm local to the area. Been in Sweetwater the last 5 years working for the state in industrial development in the Chattanooga region. So I got to work on Volkswagen and the Amazons and the Voxers. Had some good success down there. So, the strong point for me coming here was to see your potential and knowing that I'm coming back home into a community that has the acreage, that has the land, and has the potential for that same type of success. So, a strong part of that is me working with County Commission, with City Council, and doing those things because y'all are very important in everything we do. First, we appreciate your contributions you make to us already. You're very generous, and we appreciate that. And that's what I was telling Paul in some of the meetings he's attended. A lot of communities, I've worked in 25 communities in this state. And from the day I've got here in Morristown, I've never seen a more active community that volunteers and shows up at events. And that means so much when we're recruiting industry. I mean, people don't realize, because the first thing they do is pick up the newspaper. What's going on? Does everybody get along? That will eliminate you from a deal quicker than you know. And I can say here, the committees and the volunteer work and everything everybody does is so impressive. And we appreciate that. That makes our life easier. So my focus, we have a kind of an existing industry committee that goes and visits small and existing industry. And I've seen the same complaint on every form that's come back. The chamber doesn't do anything for existing industry, or we don't visit existing industry. So I'm starting to call on those folks, and that's where I need you on the ground as my eyes and ears. You guys represent every part of this community. If you're out there and there's a company that says, hey, we need help, what can we have? Send them to us. Let us know, because I think it's important that every large company that's located, Amazon.com, for example, anything they receive to move to the state of Tennessee, an existing company that's expanding can get. Same thing with Volkswagen. If an existing company expands, they can get the same benefit as a new company moving into the state. And we don't do a good enough word of that, getting it out to the existing companies. They just think, we're here, we struggle along. But if they're expanding, if they're investing capital, if they're hiring people, they get incentives. They can get tax credits, they can get training money, grants. There's things that we can help them get. So we want to be sure that the word gets out there. So that's what, one good thing about meeting with you guys, if it's suitable for you all, I like to do it at least quarterly, just kind of give you an update on what we're doing.
That'd be great. We appreciate that.
I'd love to do that. And that way it keeps you abreast of what we're doing, the projects. I can tell you right now we're working on 2 existing industry expansions, 2 potential projects that are, we're competing against 30 other places in the country that we've made presentations on. Then we're working on a couple of site things that, we may be coming to you guys for. As you know, we have some industrial land, but the state don't just say, hey, here you have industrial land. They want industrial land with water, with sewer, with gas, and call it pad ready. Because most of these companies we're recruiting want to move in and move dirt in 90 days. So we want to make sure that our parks are that suitable. So I'll be talking to you more about that, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have right now.
Any questions? Well, we certainly appreciate you coming by this morning, and we'll be looking forward to working with you.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Next item on the calendar, Eddie, if you will, come to the podium. Some of the commissioners wanted to ask you a few questions, and they asked that we schedule you for one of our meetings, so we've got you here this morning to see what's on their mind. And I'll start out with Commissioner Goins. I'll recognize you.
Thank you, Senator. Basically, what I'd like to know in your job description and stuff like that is, can you walk us through quickly from the beginning, the time you get a phone call on a death to the end?
Okay. Well, I prepared a little history for you and what the coroner's office is responsible for, if that's all right. And I just titled it, What is a Tennessee Coroner? A coroner in Tennessee is typically a layperson with most of his training coming from on-the-job experience under the direct supervision of the medical examiner and pathologist. Coroners are most often located in rural counties where tax dollars are not readily available, especially to be spent dealing with the dead. The coroner completes the following task on each call. First, I have to confirm that a human death has occurred. I've been called to the scene of many animal bones that people thought were human. Then we determine if the death appears to be by natural causes or if there is a possibility that foul play caused the death. We determine the deceased identity, determine and notify the next of kin, arrange for specific testing and examination, including autopsy, or we can discharge the body straight to the funeral home. Next thing we do is assist the families, prepare case histories, reports, and maintain records. Volumes could be written on each task listed, but this gives you a brief idea. Each call consumes from 1 to 25 hours or more. Page 1 of the Medico-Legal Handbook, also known as the Coroner's Handbook, published in 1971 by the Tennessee Department of Public Health, states the coroner is one of the oldest offices in our common law system. Originally, this office was developed in England, and the office holders were men of great wealth and prestige. That's not that way anymore. They were appointed by the king to protect the rights and the property owed to the crown upon the death of any person. Today, under the coroner system, the office holder is charged with the responsibility of having some practical knowledge of law, medicine, sociology, psychology, chemistry, and criminology. Whenever there is a suspicious death, the medical examiner determines the specific cause of death. Law enforcement attempts to determine how and where the death occurred and sometimes who caused it. The coroner is there to assist and attempt to ensure that all deaths are thoroughly investigated. He is a third and independent set of eyes, ears, and if necessary, a voice for the dead. By nature, a coroner must be curious, cautious, conscientious, compassionate, and above all, unpretentious with himself and everything he sees and does. Unequivocally, the most unpleasant responsibility the coroner has to carry out is delivering the news to the next of kin that a father, a mother, a husband, a wife, a brother, a sister, or God forbid, a child's life has ended. This task is more horrendous than anything the coroner ever sees. The coroner's role is also that of service to the community by helping the families of terminally ill and elderly patients who choose to die at home. The coroner, with the cooperation of the medical examiner, after receiving notification that a death has occurred, completes his duty and authorizes the body to be released directly to the funeral home, which the family chooses, without the family bearing the expense of ambulance rides and hospital emergency rooms. It's about $4,000 to take a dead body to Marshtown Hamlin Hospital by our EMS. When anyone dies outside the hospital in less than 24 hours of admission to the hospital or where foul play is known or suspected, the coroner must take charge of the scene and the body or bodies. The most I've had at one time has been 4. The coroner must have open communication lines with medical examiners, law enforcement, attorney general, pathologist, hospital personnel, witnesses, the deceased family, friends, and enemies, funeral home personnel, and anyone else who might be able to provide information concerning a death. Throw in being prepared to respond to coroner calls 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and the fact that the coroner's job in most rural counties is a part-time position, and there you have a brief description of a Tennessee coroner. This is a hasty explanation, but I hope you get an idea that, and the understanding that if the coroner is to be effective, he must possess the capacity to think on his feet, question everything he sees and hears, have compassion for his fellow man, and be able to communicate with people and derive conclusions from all he discovers. But that's a
Okay, sir, to clarify that some stuff up here, if I could. You have 3, 4 people working? under
I
you?
have 3 deputy coroners, yes, sir.
Okay, and the process, a person dies at home,
Mhm.
and the coroner's called.
Yes, sir.
They come out, is that a requirement, they come out?
It just depends. Well, like when your mother passed away, I was working a suicide at the same time. All 3 of my deputies, they have regular jobs. And so I was the only one that was available. But talking to the paramedics, and I don't know that you remember, but I asked them to ask you if you wanted me to come to the scene, and they asked you, and
I never was asked.
you wasn't. Well, they told me they asked you. I said to ask you because it was obvious that your mother unfortunately had a lengthy health history, and I had no suspicions that it was anything other than a natural death because of her history.
Okay, now that Noah came out, what was the process after that? What was
Okay, I authorized the body to be released to the funeral home so that you didn't have to spend $4,000 on ambulance rides, and insurance does not pay anything after somebody is dead. Medicare, none of that pays. So that's why we try very hard, if we can at all, to release the body directly to the funeral home, because a lot of these folks can't afford $4,000. And but I was in communications with paramedics on the scene. I confirmed the death had occurred through their meter, and when I found out who it was and what was going on, and I said, and plus I did go by the funeral home and later on and view the body.
Okay, because I didn't know the process, and then for, what is your charge? What would you have charged for in that situation that you didn't show up or nothing like that?
Oh, well, I'm on salary. I don't.
But you understand you're on salary, but you charge for each individual.
No, sir, I don't.
Huh?
No, I get $600 a month.
The deputies do.
Yeah.
The deputies do, but the deputies didn't act, so nothing was.
And I just wondered, the charges that we're approving every month for your fees and stuff like that, what did you do for those fees?
He's paid a salary, he doesn't have an
I understand,
individual
but
charge.
the fees that go under the coroners,
Well, I get paid $600 to take care of the deaths if I have 5 deaths a month, if I have 45 deaths a month. Well, actually 35 is the most I've answered in 1 month. I get the same fee regardless.
I understand. It's just the fact that when my mother's name was listed on that form and your fee was there, it's
Well,
like,
But I didn't.
understand.
The fee is not broke out by individual deaths on mine. Mine is just, I'm not only responsible for answering calls myself, but I have to train and supervise my deputy coroners. Every death that they answer, they call me, and I review that death with them to make sure that we've not missed anything. If there's any suspicion at all, had there been any suspicion on your mother's death, everything would have stopped and she would have sat right there until I could have got there. I was trying to help you and your family so that her body didn't have to lay there, even though she was in the bed, that she didn't have. A lot of times they're laying in the floor or wherever, and we try to get them up and out as quick as we can to make it as easy as possible on the family.
and I know she lay there for about 2.5 hours. Yeah.
Okay, well, now I authorized them to call the funeral home when I got enough information to tell me that it was all right to release her body. Then it was up to the funeral home to get there, but now May should have got there fairly quick.
Well, they were there, and they said, well, they had to wait for you, and they waited for a long, long time.
There was some miscommunications then somewhere because the paramedics and the was there law enforcement there?
There was the first, yes.
Okay. They all knew that I had released the body. So I don't know why the funeral home, I apologize if that
Yeah, they
happened.
just kept saying, well, we're waiting for Eddie Davis, we're waiting for the coroner.
Well, then obviously it was miscommunication because I told the paramedics to release the body. So something went wrong there with communication, but I apologize for that. I don't know.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Did you explain it?
Let me ask you a question.
Anybody else got a question?
Yeah, I'd like to ask a question. I know that the coroners often are called to the hospital, and you've got medical people at the hospital that can pronounce them dead. Why does the coroner have to show that?
That's not for pronouncing them dead. It's to make sure that it's a natural death and to make sure there's no suspicion of foul play, and then to identification, and then to make sure the body is released to the next of kin. We get into some awful messes. We'll have somebody, a man will die, and then we'll find out that, well, him and his wife never divorced, but they've not lived together in 25 years. She's still the legal next of kin in the eyes of the law. So we get into, that's the big thing is protecting the county to make sure the county doesn't get sued for releasing a body to the wrong person. Because we have people that, well, death brings out the worst in people a lot of times. And unfortunately, death is a big part of life. And we try to make it as easy on people as possible, as easy on the families as possible, financially and otherwise. We do whatever it takes to take care of these people. I've set up the hospital with people 4 or 5 hours. A lot of people don't have families. A lot of people are there alone. And, there's a lot of people I've buried because, well, you helped me with one. If you'll remember, a child that nobody would claim the body, and we buried him out at the church. But I got prisoners out of the jail and went and hand dug the grave because there was no money to bury this child. But I've got 5 buried up at Hamlin Memory Gardens that's never been identified. Whatever it takes, and by the way, I do make sure that everybody gets a funeral, and they're Hispanic, they get a Catholic funeral, and the ministers here in town are real good to work with me on those kind of things. But whatever it takes to take care of these people, we try our best to do.
Any further questions? Eddie?
I have Wade. Periodically, we see somebody here that says White Pine, Bean Station,
Yes, sir.
Jefferson County.
I try my best to get those counties to take care of their own, but a lot of times they won't do it. The problem is Hamlin County is a medical center. Granger County, for example, has no hospital in that county. And if they have to be taken to a hospital, we're usually the nearest one. And so if they're dead on arrival at the hospital, I try to get the other counties to take care of them. And if they won't, we're going to make sure that the death is investigated, and that if anything needs to be done, it's going to be done. To try to save the county money, I went and got trained on drawing bodily fluids. A lot of times, the overdose deaths is just crazy in this county. When I first started coronering 21 years ago this month, we would have maybe 2 or 3 overdose deaths a year, and that was usually on barbiturates, people that took sleeping pills that wanted to take their life. Now we have, I have at least 1 a week overdose death. And I hated for the county to spend $1,600 on a full-fledged autopsy when all we needed was a toxicology report. So I got trained in how to draw, blood, urine, and vitros, and samples of the liver that we send to St. Louis University, and it cost the county $200 to determine that it was an overdose, as opposed to $1,600 for when you see that toxicology was done as opposed to an autopsy. That's why that's there. You know, when we find somebody with a needle in their arm, we're pretty well sure that it's a drug overdose, and we don't have to go to the expense of a full autopsy. So, you know, I am very conscious of the county's money. I'm a taxpayer myself, and I try to save money wherever I can. And but the counties, because Hamlin County is a mecca for health care for the surrounding counties, we have to take the good with the bad.
We can't back charge them.
No, sir. No, by law, the county where the death occurs is responsible for the death. Now, if they're, you know, they may be dead, but they're not legally dead until they're pronounced, so they have to get to the hospital to be pronounced. So that's why we get stuck sometimes with other counties' problems. But most times, I've got a pretty good working relationship with Granger County and Hawkins County and Cott County and Jeff County. And most times, especially if it's one that's going to have an autopsy, I can get them to take the responsibility for the case. Because I have to go to the death scene if you know, and I don't feel comfortable going out of the county. But there's a lot to this office, and you know, we do our best. You know, my wife and I spent all day Friday in training in Gatlinburg for the latest technology on SIDS, Sudden Infant Death Center. We spent 8 hours in training on that Friday. We try to stay on the cutting edge, if you will, of the newest technology and the newest procedures, and we try to make sure that everybody in Hamlin County is taken care of and as least invasive as possible.
Any other questions?
Eddie, I got one question. You can't charge back for an autopsy, correct? As a rule.
As far as I know, that when the medical examiner orders it, then the county is responsible.
So the medical examiner is responsible for ordering the autopsy, or
Yes,
you
sir.
and your guy?
Well, we go out and we call the medical examiner and present what we've got. We gather the data,
Right.
then we call the medical examiner, here's
Okay.
what we've got.
I guess
And
my question is this: for instance, I have someone died, and you didn't feel an autopsy is necessary, but I want an autopsy. Is
Then-
that my responsibility? then?
yes, sir. In that case, if we can't find a reason to put the county to the expense of an
Gotcha.
autopsy, then we help the individual. If they want a private autopsy, private autopsies start at $2,000.
Right, okay. Thank you.
Any other questions from anybody? I see none. Eddie, thank you for coming. Moving on the calendar, next item, jail study committee.
Oh, if anybody ever has any questions about anything going on in this office, please call me. My number's always on there, and I'll be glad to tell you.
Jail study committee is still in progress working. Nancy will give us an update at the regular county commission meeting, but we've got work in progress, and once we get some things laid out, then the full committee will get back together and take them up. So that's all I've got to report on jail study committee. Finance committee, Chairman Jarvis, you are recognized.
Okay, call the finance committee to order. Anyone want to address the